Ladies and gents, boys and girls, what's going on? We are live in Dallas, Texas, day 2 of SEC Media Days. 4 more coaches speak. We're going to react to it, give our top takeaways from everything that Kirby Smart, Josh Heupel, Brent, Venables, and Eli Drinkwitz had to say at the podium. Guys, I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. I'm joined by Cole Thompson as well. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, SECunfiltered.com. We're brought to you by our friends at MyBookie. This trip to Dallas, Texas, brought to you by MyBookie. Go to mybookie.ag, use promo code SECU at sign-up to receive a special welcome offer on your first deposit. Get to mybookie.ag, promo code SECU to get that special welcome offer today. Like I mentioned, guys, I'm Chris Phillips. I'm joined by Dave Shumate, Cole Thompson. Fellas, how we feeling today?
Feeling good, man. Feeling good. Weather isn't too bad here in Atlanta. I was asking you how lunch was today, so I'm judging how your day was. Sound like some chicken breast, Chris. You gave it 2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up. Food's been
I thought
solid.
today overall was more exciting. I thought we got some good nuggets, some good feels from teams than we did yesterday.
Listen, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You got to make sure that you pace yourself throughout the day, and that includes through meals, Christopher. Just making sure that you're eating the right barbecue, and on top of that, you're not putting beans in your chili. I got in an argument with someone that watched the video yesterday, and they DM'd me, and they said, how dare you say that Texans don't put beans in their chili? No, we don't. I don't care what flabbergasted background you come from. There's no such beans as beans in our chili.
I did see someone come after you, Cole, about your beans and chili take, which is, God bless the offseason. We're arguing about beans and chili. I guess that's an argument you could have all year round, though, 365 days a year, 24/7. So you can have at it. I like beans with or without, or chili with or without beans, and I like beans with or without chili, I guess. So I'm in the clear there on both. Again, guys, had a great day today. Like you mentioned, Dave, a lot to break down, especially when you start diving into reading between the lines, which, again, is what we do here. A lot to take away from the 4 coaches that spoke today. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Of course, Dave, you and Cole and a couple, but Dave, you especially, doing all these reactions, these breakdowns. Let's start with Kirby Smart here, the first coach that kicked us off this morning. I want to jump to a certain quote that really stood out to me, guys, that I thought was probably my favorite quote of the day. And I thought Kirby Smart did a really, really good job of navigating this question, because there's a number of ways he could have went. Every single one of these coaches is being asked about Texas and the challenges of Texas and, even Oklahoma as well, but this new era of the SEC. And Kirby Smart had this to say. The question was, you mentioned wanting to play the best. You have Texas this year. Do you consider them to be one of the best? And what stands out to you about them? Again, he could have went a bunch of different directions, but he said, and I quote, every team we play is the best that week. Please understand that. In the SEC, humility's a week away. I have a ton of respect for Sark and the job he does. He then paused, and he went on to say, got to watch them last year. They have a tremendous recruiting base. They do a tremendous job in recruiting. Big physical team built like a SEC football team. He was complimentary, but, guys, I thought what Kirby Smart did such a good job of doing. He was complimentary, but he did not put Texas on any sort of pedestal. I think recognizing that, hey, we're the top dog in the SEC. Texas is the one that's got to come in this league and prove it. And then, again, a host of other things he mentioned. The NIL quotes about Dan Lanning and Phil Knight I thought were absolutely hilarious, if you read between the lines on that one. We'll start with you, Dave. Thoughts on what Kirby had to say? And I'll ask you about the Texas comment as well. What did you make of his response to that question?
I think, these guys will play a little coy at times, pretend like they don't know much about any other team's roster. And, again, they don't know in depth people's top 40 roster. But, again, we live in a social media world. The world's much faster now. You get news. They're not dumb. They know who is recruiting well, who's bringing on different people. He knows Sark. Again, he mentioned he watched them last year during their common opponent with Alabama, probably prepping for the SEC championship game. So I think he knows you watch the team. He's like, dude, Sark's not an idiot. There's a lot of those guys that came from the same tree as me. Like, it starts at the line of scrimmage. I've looked at both their offensive line, defensive line. They know what they're doing. He didn't mention Texas, but I'm sure he would say – he didn't mention Oklahoma, but I'm sure he would say the same thing about that from paying attention to what Brent, Venables and staff have been doing the last 3 years. But, me and Cole mentioned it on the Kirby Smart reaction video. It's wild to say this is year 9 for him. When he said that today, you know it, but until you say it, you're like – Yeah, man, it's year 9. And the thing I always liked about Kirby, because I was there then in that transition a little bit, like for about 6 months between Rick and them. Dude, to give him credit, he met with everybody. I've never had that happen. I've been a part of one other transition, but that never happened. He came in and met with everybody one-on-one and defined your expectations. And again, you go talk to anybody that's working under Nick Saban, Bill Belichick. That's always Bill Belichick's biggest strength. You hear Nick Saban on that documentary they had. It wasn't really what you knew like X's and O's wise. It was like how you defined responsibilities is like clearly that you knew where you stood. And I think not just in college football, I think we can all attest in all aspects of life in every organization. That's rare. I love how he talks about they talked about Nike. They studied Nike. They're state of the art. They're it's a forward thinking program. So you always love hearing Kirby Smart come to the podium.
Studied their NIL too. Studied their NIL too.
Stray at Dan Lanning, Marshall Malco, and the boys.
Listen, you know, Kirby went back to his guys at Georgia and said, "This is what they're doing. We better make sure we're doing this plus some."
Yeah, no doubt. And then me and Cole wrapped it up. The other one was just like, I think we talk about Garrett Nussmeier hanging around a lot. He's kind of that feel-good story. It's a rare situation in college football. But also, Kirby Smart brought up Carson Beck sitting there waiting his time as well. I know he started last year, but he sat there and waited his time. Former Alabama quarterback commit from Jacksonville, waited his time behind Stetson Bennett. And then so I thought he had some good key talking points. It's just in general, I think Kirby would be similar to Saban, would be good at anything he did, managing a CEO, president of any company. So it's always interesting to hear his way of thought. So I always appreciate when Kirby comes up on the mic. It doesn't make me feel any different about Georgia this year. I mean, they're going to be good, but he always has good insights.
Kirby gave the CFO version of the CEO approach that Nick Saban gave yesterday, where Nick Saban goes and says they're not going to run the SEC. Kirby did the PG version, saying, well, every game is going to be the biggest matchup. And you know what? He's right. But here's the difference. I think Texas fans really understand, number one, they're not the ones puffing out their chest saying they're going to run the SEC. There is a lot of actual humble Texas fans. Don't listen to the 2% of people that flood your internet and your message boards talking about what we're going to do when we enter the SEC. Like most Texas fans understand it is going to be a daunting task, but also Sark understands it's going to be a daunting task. He's been in the SEC before. He's coached in the SEC before. He knows what it takes to win, which is why he focused a lot of his internal assets on building offensive line play. I mean, go back to 2021 when he was hired. The reason that their spring game was just a scrimmage was not because of they want to rest players. They didn't have an offensive line that could block for any quarterback. That was why they had to go out and build up the line, which again is a big reason why I believe that Texas is going to make a jump immediately. And Oklahoma, there's a few more question marks. But when you hear the way that Kirby talked about every game being the biggest game, number one, it goes back to his other comment where he said, we don't need last year's loss in Atlanta to serve as motivation for us. There's no reason why we have to think for 1 second that that's going to hinder our success or that's going to make us play with a chip on our shoulder. When you reach a certain standard in college football with the pedigree of a program, the way that Georgia has, you internally just demand excellence on every drive. That's what motivates you, not a loss on an Atlanta weekend. That's not it at all. I love the way that he was able to address that. Every game is big because if he also knows we can't afford to lose or play B- football against B+ teams, because if we do, it leads us to going into Auburn and having a matchup where nearly this is the only thing that nearly we drop a ball. And so I appreciated that. I think he understands that Texas joining the SEC, while good in the line of scrimmage, while very solid overall in terms of what they did last year, they're going to have to still play up to the standard of everybody else. And they're not going to be complacent against any team, including Texas. And I think that that's a big deal. The one thing, Dave, you and I completely disagree on this one. You talk about Carson Beck saying that, him sticking around. For a program like South Carolina, for a program like Missouri, that's a big deal. You're Georgia. You can land whatever 5-star talent you want and figure it out along the way. Like, that's the way that Georgia is and the way Georgia's been underneath Kirby. He's able to go ahead and bring in who he wants. He can pick and choose which recruit he wants to target. And it's a good story that you get Carson Beck to sit and learn and realize, I want to be a part of this winning culture. But there's a reason to think, okay, well, what happens if, he leaves? Now we're talking about Brock Vandagriff actually balling out last year. And I think Vandagriff would have been fine. I believe in the multiverse. And there is a world and a reality where the long strawberry blonde locks is actually leading Georgia to a national championship. Like, that's just the way that Georgia is. So
remember, for a while though, he couldn't keep guys because he had Jacob Eason leave, Justin Fields leave.
That was like the knock. That was the knock on Kirby.
What's it called? He believed that Fromm was the answer, and he learned from that.
Yeah, that was the knock on Kirby. I did like to Cole's point how Kirby said that, I don't motivate off of failure. I don't motivate off of success. I think that's what makes Kirby Smart so special and so good as a coach is that I've said before, and I'll say it again, I think there's not a better master motivator, whether it be off-season, pregame, halftime speech, right? We've all heard these speeches. There's not a better motivator for his football team in college football than Kirby Smart. The guy's just wired different. He's a grinder. Talking to Georgia guys here, like Kirby Smart really, truly is a football guy. I mean, Dave, I heard you talk about this. He mentioned, he's like, I don't like to travel. He's like, my wife loves to travel. I don't like to travel. I'm a Southeast guy. I mean, this dude, his best day is if you just left him in a room alone and gave him a chalkboard and let him go to work. That's Kirby's best day.
I'm sure he's a little deep down. If you really ask him, pissed off he doesn't have more SEC guys. Again, he mentioned that a little bit.
He mentioned it. You could tell he was like, it's kind of interesting. I won 2 titles. I didn't win the SEC.
And he's pissed off too. Probably nobody's talking about their Clemson game.
People he had to correct the guy today. Yeah, he had to bring it up. So,
do you think that do you think he listens to Taylor Swift when he's all in his element, like his wife? Or do you think that he's just doing his own thing?
Probably in the car with his wife and daughter.
I'd say he's probably sitting there just like, God bless. I can't believe this is on my feed. I hope that he shakes it off. I really do.
Guys, we got to bring up, by the way, because I know many were talking about this. It was not asked in the main media room. Somebody in one of the breakaway rooms did ask. Local Georgia media asked. And this actually became a story today. The driving arrests that have taken place since last year. I think there's 24 of them. This obviously happened last week. You knew it was going to come up at SEC Media Days. He mentioned that a couple of guys had been dismissed from the team. I thought also what was interesting, guys, and this is the future of college football, that they are actually fining guys via the collective. Guys that are getting NIL. Our good buddy Graham Coffey actually was the one that posted that video, and everybody ran with it and posted the quote, that, again, they are fining guys. So
where's that money go?
Back in the collective?
I have no idea. Back in the collective, I guess.
The third string wide receiver that's waiting for his deal.
Thoughts on that? I mean, again, I don't know if we really – I guess we did want to hear it. I don't know. I mean, this is for talking football, right? It's a question that had to get asked. But thoughts on the response from Kirby Smart? And, I mean, again, it looks like to me – I mean, I watched the video of his response. I think he's handling as best he can. It's just – it's frustrating for him. It's how do we stop our guys from being knuckleheads? It's – what do you do? So
I mean, I think he's done exhausted all. I mean, when I saw he came out today, it was so cool. He's like, I mean, I don't know any other coaches that have suspended a player before over a parking or a car citation or something like that. He's right. But I saw Rusty Mansell from On 3, who was Kirby Smart's roommate in college, so he talks to him directly, and he mentioned something like he's like, I heard they had some pretty choice words here, but I'm sure that's happened before. I'm sure this wasn't like, you know what? This 25th time, this is it. That's it. I'm going to go off on him now and use some choice words. So he said that happened. I'm sure it did. But, I mean, again, I don't know what else you really want the guy. It's just it's unfortunate. I mean, I guess they're taking some structure to it and kind of taking away some money from the NIL, the Classic City Collective Matt Hips runs, I think.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's a good idea. I'm interested where that money goes.
I'm going to get blasted in the comments section. I don't really care.
Bar one person, Big M.
Nothing changes. I mean, honestly, what changes? Because of, sure, you're getting fined. If you're a starter, then you're getting fined, maybe 3% of your NIL collective. You're not going to get penalized. And the biggest thing is that if you are one of the key players, you're not going to be kicked off the team. And you know that because if one player was kicked off the team, he was a special teams ace. The other one's a starter. So until we actually see the ramifications lead to, no, we're done. It is a one and done type of mentality. And you got to make a lesson out of another player that maybe hurts your team for a small period. But if you feel good about your depth, that's going to eventually build your roster. People will buy into that. But unfortunately, it's basically just a slap on the wrist until further notice for those who already have proven that they belong in the first team defense or first team offense. And I'm going to also make this abundantly clear. This is not a Georgia problem here because this is a Georgia conversation that we're having. It's a problem in the SEC period. If you are a proven commodity on a high-profile team looking to coast your way into the postseason, and you are a major asset that could make or break your success, you get a little bit of a pass. And until we actually start seeing moves made to where they are penalized, where they are dealing with the ramifications, especially in Athens, where we've already seen 2 players and a personnel member tragically lose their lives in this incident, and they've learned nothing from it in the last 2 years. It's a wash, rinse, repeat. Cool. I'll take the 3% penalty in my NIL collective.
It's funny. I was talking to a Texas guy about this today. When you're an elite level performer, you can get away with a lot more than if you're not. And I guess this is kind of we were talking about Chris Beard, honestly, and it's like it's interesting how things are forgotten. They're swept under the rug. And I mean, listen, guys, it's all about winning. So this is not going to be a storyline come Saturdays.
Jimbo used to say it best: turd to talent ratio.
Right.
It's not even for everybody. If you produce on Saturday, I'll deal with your crap.
It's like the Swamp Kings documentary said. I treat my stars like stars and my shit like shit. And if you're a star, you get different treatment. Bottom line. And you know what? Here's the honest truth, though, guys. Ain't no Georgia fan wants you to make a point by suspending one of your best players and risk losing a football game. That's it. Bottom line. You just don't. So it is what it is. Let's move to Josh Heupel, guys. He was the second coach who spoke this morning. Thoughts on what Heupel had to say? I thought it was interesting hearing him expand on Nico, the offense. I was able to get a question in with him about Chris Brazzell and the wide receiver room. I don't think there was anything major that came away from it necessarily. It was cool, by the way. Cooper Mays, hat game on point, looked incredible. He had some comments. Who's the real UT? Of course, he said, hey, we were around 50 years before them, so kind of speaks for itself. Anyways, guys, thoughts on Josh Heupel, what he had to say. I sensed a quiet confidence, nothing kind of over the top coming from him today.
Yeah, CP, I thought you had one of the better questions about Chris Brazzell. I thought it was one of the better. Again, Heupel's not going to give you much. He's me and Cole were talking about it on the reaction. He's very black and white. Not going to get you can tell he wanted to avoid the Oklahoma questions.
Yeah.
Just like that's going to be a weird situation, me being on that sideline, whether that's a day game or night game. He avoided that like the plague. I thought he was someone briefly mentioned the secondary to him, and I thought it was interesting. He brought up the Oregon State transfer, and you can tell he brought up that, hey, we were a better tackling team in the spring, and I think that's something that teams struggle with. There's not a lot of great tackling teams because when I was in it, I'd be the NFL liaison, so I'd always ask scouts, hey, they go to different practices and stuff, like, why is tackling bad now? And they always make the teams, it's pretty easy, like the teams that don't practice tackling are the poor ones, and the teams that do. And you'd be surprised how many teams now, no one really practices tackling now, much less once you get to the season. Nobody does, because they're so worried about getting guys. And Gus Malzahn used to annoy the shit out of me with it. Let's just get him to Saturday. That's what he'd always talk about. It's like, well, shoot, dude, when he misses that tackle in the flats when we need it on a big 3rd and 5, they throw that smoke, you're going to be wishing we practiced it. But that showed me a little, like you said, Chris, I think you used a good term, some quiet confidence there on that defense. You can tell they feel good. He aborted he was on the Brian Kelly train of, hey, this is my deepest team that I've been a part of here in Tennessee. So I think I'm with you. I have a little more confidence in Tennessee. And agree, Heupel's going to Heupel. He's not going to give you too much. But overall, I was impressed with him. I thought they were fun.
So real fast, Cooper Mays, I don't know if you know this, but the Tennessee slogan is the volunteer state. So when you sent Davy Crockett and the rest of those boys down to fight at the Alamo, you volunteered to give up the name UT. So the real UT belongs in the state of Texas. And as a Texan, I'm going to defend that with my honor. I don't care what you say in your Stetson. But going back to a guy in Josh Heupel, the thing that I walked away with is that this is a team he feels confident in, can live up to expectations on all facets of the game, where everyone will step up in case of an emergency. Now, what exactly do I mean by that? Let's say that there is a matchup where your defense is unfortunately getting sliced and diced left and right. Well, they believe that they have the wide receiver core that can elevate the status of Nico Iamaleava and the offensive line that can protect him, that will be able to combat every touchdown given up with the touchdown scored. Let's say that you have a regionally average passing attack. They like their run game, headlined by Dylan Sampson. They got some young up-and-comers. It's unproven, but unproven does not mean unpotentially matched to live up to expectations. That does not mean underrated. That does not mean underwhelming. So I feel good about that. They have an offense that, if in case it is anemic on a Saturday against a very potent pass coverage, they can go ahead and get their defensive front seven to rush the passer and force the ball to get out of hand faster for a quarterback. So it felt like there was an air of confidence that on any given Saturday, one position group may have to be that X factor. And the crazy part is I've heard people talk about how there are going to be games this year where you end up seeing teams win by one possession. Do you feel like that's going to be enough to impress the committee? Guys, a win's a win. I mean, at the end of the day, if you go 10-2 and you're fighting and you're ranked number 9, nobody's going to care how you got the win against a top 15 opponent. They're going to see, oh, I beat 14th ranked Oklahoma. Oh, I beat 11th ranked LSU. Oh, I beat 7th ranked Alabama. I don't care how it happened. I got the win, and I got the ranked win, and that's all that's going to matter. And I think that's where you look at Josh Heupel this year. Talk low, talk slow, and don't talk a lot. Don't give away too much of your keys. That's the way I think that he presented himself today. I was very impressed with how he believes that this roster is trending upward. I like the depth that he talked about. I thought they added in some really quality names in the portal that did not get addressed enough at the high-end level. Holden Stays, the tight end from Notre Dame, I think is going to be a plug-and-play addition for this offense. I think that having Zalance Hurd, who would have been a starter at LSU this year if Will Campbell didn't exist or Emory Jones decided to transfer, he would have been fine. Now he's playing left tackle. I think that they are really well positioned to be a balanced offense. And the defense, the only question I have is, can the secondary be average? If you're average, honestly, we're talking about a potential roster that makes it down to Atlanta. That's how deep this team is. There's two main elements: Nico's progression, secondary being able to go ahead and deliver on Saturdays.
I thought Saban made a good point on this too. He brought up, just because the extra games, bringing up more injuries. We don't talk enough about backup quarterback situations. He brought up that, dude, everybody, he's like, hell, we got the benefit of the doubt last year against Florida State because they're backup. Tennessee would be a creek without a paddle if Nico goes down. I mean, they got, I think, Gaston Moore, who was a walk-on for me at UCF, is the backup, and I think Jake Merklinger, who's a true freshman coming over from Savannah. It's interesting, just overall, Cole bringing up the depth and stuff, maybe things like, cool.
Yeah, Nico's got to pan out for sure. Nobody's thinking about that. You don't want to think about, quarterbacks going down. We obviously hope all these guys stay healthy, but yeah, to your point, I mean, Nico's got to stay healthy. He's got to be what they expect him to be. But we mentioned quiet confidence, Dave. I think that's, to me, that kind of feels like the theme of Tennessee's offseason. It just, for a team that could potentially be as good as Tennessee is going to be, it does feel like it's been a quiet offseason for them. I mean, even today, we're talking more about Brent Venables, who we're about to talk about in a second. We're talking more, obviously, about Kirby Smart, even Eli Drinkwitz. Tennessee, I don't want to say that they were a footnote today because they certainly weren't, but I don't know. I think Josh Heupel and company probably prefer it, too, to kind of fly under the radar. And, they'll be reminding folks on the field. And that game you mentioned in Norman against Oklahoma, he can say whatever about – there's going to be a lot of emotions in that one. He mentioned I've never been on the other – he said it'd be his first time back. And talking to OU folks, by the way, the way it ended, obviously he was fired there. Maybe he felt like he was made out to be the scapegoat when things went south. There's going to be a lot of emotion in that one on both sides.
I think it has to. Personally, how can it not? Because for Oklahoma fans, you got to remember, this was the quarterback that led you to the promised land. This was the one that gave you the Crystal Ball trophy. But also, he's coming in with blood and vengeance, because at the end of the day, this may be a game that we don't talk about enough in week 4, but by week 12, there could be massive playoff implications for it. Like I brought up today before, and I brought this up on another show, I personally believe that NC State game is one of the best non-conference games, only because of that's a team that's not going to get the benefit of the doubt like Alabama.
Cole loves NC State.
I love you, my Wolfpack. I do. I love you, the Wolfpack.
He's a big Dave Dillon.
Loves them.
It is going to be.
He did talk about that game.
Yeah, someone asked him about that. Because they said, how did that Pitt game springboard y'all 2 years?
Yeah.
He had a good comment. He's like, I don't know if I'd wanted it to go into overtime, but
he said, quote, every season's different. I'm not sure you want to necessarily go into overtime to kickstart your season, but it certainly helped. NC State's a really good program. Coach Doran's done a really good job there. They're a really good football team. That will be a big-time matchup Saturday evening over there in Charlotte.
It's a test for Nico, too.
Yeah.
Whether people want to admit, before you get to go, imagine NC State's defense as the appetizer for what will be the entree of Oklahoma. And that will be a great way and a palate cleanser to see where Nico is improving and how you utilize your first SEC matchup going back to Norman.
Yeah, like we're talking about the schedule here real quick before we move on to Venables. Me and Cole talked about it on the reaction to Tennessee. I'm ready for Tennessee to start being a good team away from home, like against good competition. The game me and Cole talked about, that's a sleeper a little bit on their schedules. That very next week after Oklahoma, sleeper game, they head to Fayetteville. Like, that's going to take that. Oklahoma games be emotional. It's a road game. It's going to be late at night, I think. They're going to get back at 2 or 3 in the morning. You don't really start your body clock to get going again probably about Monday, till you get normal. You go take another road trip. I think there's some stat. I think somebody, I think I was talking about our guy Charles Power, or whatever, not Charles Power, Power Hour over there, the LSU guy. He talks about it since 2019 or 20, when teams have true back-to-back road games, not a bye week built in, true back-to-back road. There's only 2 teams that have gone undefeated. That it was 2021 Georgia, and 2020 Alabama is the only one to do that. And 2020 Alabama, loved that team to death, but that was a COVID year, and those stands weren't full either.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's gonna present a unique challenge for sure to Tennessee, and I think one of the more underrated matchups is going to help us define who Tennessee is in 2024. You mentioned Brent. Yeah, go ahead.
Why did nobody ask about Florida? I'm sorry. To me, you brought this up. I think everyone's brought this up. If there is one game you have to win this year to earn respect, it's Florida. You can't tell me that after the last few years, even before you arrived, you can't tell me that we're going to respect you as an SEC contender if you lose to Florida. You can't. I'm sorry.
I think it's a fair point too. Let me go hunt. Let me go hunt down Heupel. He's probably somewhere around here. I'll go ask.
Somewhere around here. Let's ask him. What do you think?
Why not?
What happens if you lose to Florida again?
Yeah, why not? Let's move to Brent Venables. Dave just mentioned him. Really the man of the hour, right? First time at SEC Media Days. The Oklahoma media was all over the place, by the way. I mean, the media room was packed with Oklahoma media. Jackson Arnold, you'd have thought he was All-American, All-Conference last year, just media all over the place, getting questions from him. Billy Bowman as well. Danny Stutzman. I mean, they brought the stars, obviously, to Dallas, Texas. Guys, I thought that went about as well as it could have for Brent Venables in his first SEC Media Days.
Agreed.
Again, I thought presented a strong front. Wasn't cocky or had this brashness or bravado like we're bigger than the SEC. This is a mockery of us. I thought he came in with humility, but a lot of confidence when he said, Oklahoma football, we are not intimidated. We will not be intimidated. We are here to take on the SEC. And I think, again, the way he handled it, a lot of confidence in his football team. Said he feels good about the offensive line, which I thought was really, really interesting because we know that's the question. And I've said, guys, before, I think that could be the most important position group in the SEC this season because if it clicks, the chain reaction that'll happen in the SEC will be massive. Guys, your thoughts on Brent Venables? And again, he spoke on everything from Red River to taking on an SEC schedule to his quarterback, Jackson, onto the line of scrimmage play, everything in between.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he had a good answer about them talking about Jackson Arnold taking that next step. He was like, I mean, some of that is he's like, we got to show him that we got to give him the headlights. We got to be the headlights for him. And that's why they call us coach. That's why we have coach in front of our first name. And I think sometimes we like coaches and us forget about it's like, yeah, again, it's about the Jimmies and Joes, not the X's and O's, but we got to set these guys up for success. And that's a true coach speak. That's a true like X's and O's. You can tell listening to Brent Venables, listen to him when he was on here with Dusty Dorchek and who else was on there? I think it was Roman Harper and Cole Kublik were on there. You can just tell that guy would sit there for hours and talk ball. You just like the answer. He has his players' backs. Kids love playing for him. I mean, him and Sark get these questions. I mean, Sark will get this question. Like, is Oklahoma ready for the SEC? Is Texas going to be ready for the SEC? It's like, I think we're asking those guys a year too early, that question. I mean, they don't know yet because they haven't done it. Not saying they can't, they just haven't done it. Those questions just kind of, I understand you have to ask those questions. They just get old. I mean, what do you want the guy to say? I mean, he's going to be like, I think we're as well equipped as we can be. But like you said, Chris, didn't come off as arrogant or cocky, like laughing about it. But again, they've built their roster in the line of scrimmage. Yeah, they got some guys they got to replace on the offensive line, but Bill Beatonbow, like Cole's mentioned, is going to do a phenomenal job. I think he's going to get the most out of that group. He got asked about horns down. Gave a great quote. I mean, if they call it a penalty, they call it a penalty. We shouldn't do it if we know it's a penalty.
His response to that was really funny. He kind of
I thought he handled himself.
He kind of smirked and like you could tell. I could see the wheels turning where he's like, don't say the wrong thing here because there is a wrong answer.
These questions I posted, put something out on Twitter about it. Someone asked him about how's it now going to be recruiting against A&M in Arkansas and Dallas.
Yeah, I saw you mention like they've been
they've been recruiting against them just the beginning of time. Like
if anything, it only helps because now you're on a level playing field. Like
but I thought overall he was kind of the star of the day. I don't know. I mean, I know Cole thought he would go the longest. What was his time? Anybody get a time?
It was not the longest.
It was not the longest by a
not
long
even close.
shot.
I think Brent Venables has come a long way. He's been coached, I think, for this type of stuff. So.
Yeah, so I thought he did a good job mentioning Curtis Lofton, their new GM, and then partnering with Jake Rosenberg and them who started a new company. So I thought overall they did a phenomenal job, forward thinking. I think Oklahoma's got their guy for the future. I'm fired up about that hire if I'm a Sooner.
Yeah. I need every Oklahoma fan that watched this video to apologize if you thought for 1 second that Lincoln Riley ever would have given you the type of vibrato that you just got today. That is a coach that is prepared to handle anything, including criticism from his own fan base in the SEC. And that alone is why you extended him. The way he carried himself today was not with a sign of arrogance. It was a sign of poise and demeanor, understanding every win is earned. We can earn those wins. We are not going to be playing second fiddle simply because we are the newcomers. We don't care what the outside noise is saying. We internally already know what we are as a program. We've identified our strengths. We know where we need to improve. He didn't go out as going far as Hugh Freeze a few years ago where he said, listen, give us time. But what he did do was he understood this is a building process. Ask me a year from now where we feel that we can get better in the SEC. But you better guess this year because we're going to continue to improve. You heard him say we're building off 2025. Dave brought this up a second ago. You're talking about how's it going to be recruiting against recruiting against Texas A&M, SMU, and Arkansas now in the Lone Star State. They got the big blue and yellow logo on their chest, and they were finishing top 15 in recruiting every single year already with the Big 12 brand. That only doubled their numbers. And their NIL collective is not going to be sitting by idle watching as Texas and watching as A&M make jumps and readjustments and find their way into college football playoff conversations. That's not going to be the case. I love the fact that he embraced, that he understands where Oklahoma is, but he wasn't going to play second fiddle. That is a man of poise and demeanor that you need to adjust to a new conference. And immediately, I thought he was the biggest winner of the day. I thought, hands down, he was the biggest winner of the day. I love the fact that everybody that was in the building also brought up the rivalry. They brought up how Red River's coming on in. They made it clear. They did. Listen, we get it. We know that we're right now going to be a team that is going to have to earn our stripes, but we don't really care. I love Danny Stutzman to answer. I mean, Stutzman, I thought, sold it when he said Quinn Ewers was not wrong, bringing up how everyone's going to be Texas Super Bowl. I dream about that game all the time. I love the answer because you want to know why? That just shows you that at least in that sense, they understand what rivalries and what impact is in the SEC. And so all in all, I think Oklahoma proved today to a lot of people that not just financially they belong, but culture-wise, they understand what it means to be a part of this conference.
I thought, too, guys, it was interesting. He addressed the coordinator changes, coming in with two new coordinators and essentially maybe alleviated some of the concerns that could be a big issue for them. I thought that was interesting. But like you said, Cole, I think you put it really well. In regards to winners and losers of media days, if there's such a thing, right? Brent Venables, big-time winner. You know, I don't know that it makes any questions go away. But like Dave said, you feel really confident that I've gotten some questions here this week. You think Brent Venables, what do you think about him in Oklahoma? I mean, I think he's their guy, man. I think he's their guy for the future. He cut his teeth at OU, obviously, and I think Oklahoma fans should feel pretty good about the dude they've got in that seat.
He also knows how to win. I mean, like whether or not you want to agree that he knows how to win at the head coaching level, he's gone up against Alabama before, and he's walked away on the other side with the national championship while Clemson. So I don't think that he is going to have any time wondering how it takes to adjust to this conference. He already gets what it is.
Asking both y'all a question here. I think you could make an argument here. Do y'all agree with this? Seth Luttrell, probably you could make the case maybe one of the more impactful coordinators in the league. It could go either way and have a massive impact on this league. Because I think if Oklahoma turns out to be a 9-win team, that makes a lot of other teams' schedule more difficult. They're 6-6, 7-5. I think it's where a lot of people kind of have them. It kind of stays the same. But if Seth Luttrell can get that offense going, get the offensive line play to Jackson Arnold's strengths, I think that's going to have a massive impact on the league race just in general.
That's what's so fascinating, Dave, is we can look and sit here right now and say this schedule is this schedule is that because of that. This team is this team is that. A plus B equals C. But again, if B turns out to be a quantity we didn't expect, the whole result's going to be thrown to hell, right? So to your point, if Oklahoma's all of a sudden a 9 or God forbid 10-win team, Missouri's schedule just got tougher.
Yeah.
You know, there's multiple schedules out there all of a sudden like, oh my goodness, this isn't what we thought it was going to be. So to your point, man, I mean, listen, that's why I said I think the offensive line for Oklahoma is arguably the most important position group in the SEC because if they click, I mean, I think Jackson Arnold can be a high-end quarterback. He was really confident and poised today at SEC Media Days. Excited for the challenge it is the SEC. I thought it was funny. He actually had a quote today, guys. It was in the player breakaway sessions where he said, I've been staying off social media. I think that's a really smart thing to do. Anyways, though, high-end level guy. They got all kinds of playmakers around him. We've talked a lot, guys, about Deion Burks. Think he can be just an all-world everything type of dude. Maybe lead the SEC in receiving. And then defensively, it should be their best defense they've had in maybe over a decade. So they're set up well. That offensive line clicks. They can just hold the pieces together, even if it's by duct tape. Oklahoma can upset the established order if all that comes together.
There are two things that come to mind for me real fast. Number one, if Oklahoma has an offensive line that can be proactive and keep Jackson Arnold upright, the college football playoff committee is going to be in a world of hurt because I don't think that they want to see 7 teams finish 10-2 or 11-1, or even a handful of teams go 9-3 in the SEC. Because regardless, Greg Sankey has them handcuffed saying, you will allow us to put this many teams in the postseason or we will leave and your playoff will be a joke and ours will be the legit one in the eyes of the public, just like we talk about with the group of 5 starting their own playoff. But number 2, I'm going to call my bold shot right here and right now for 2025. Jackson Arnold will be the number 1 quarterback in the SEC that we're talking about next season, not Nico Iamaleava. I am that confident that if Bill Beatonbow gets this offensive line at the pace, the way we have been talking about Nico is the way we will be talking about Jackson Arnold.
Okay, you heard it here first. More bold takes coming as we approach kickoff. With that, guys, yeah, go ahead, David.
No, I was kidding. I said more bold takes for 2025.
2025, because God knows about doing it for
2025 specifically. Yeah. Guys, final coach of the day, Eli Drinkwitz, who I've actually just kind of seen walking around here making his rounds. You know, I was sitting there, guys, believe it or not, and this is not a shot at Mizzou. I was sitting there thinking to myself, isn't it crazy this time a year ago, our thoughts on Eli Drinkwitz, on this Missouri football program, and where we sit now? And it's just kind of surreal. Like, nobody flipped the script more in a calendar year. This time last year, we're talking about – and somebody asked him about that, right? I loved Eli Drinkwitz taking the shot at Dennis Dodd about the hot seat thing. He's like, you know, nobody had me on their hot seat. Dennis Dodd did. He had me on this hot seat, which I thought was really funny. He said hot seat, cold seat. It's part of the nature of the business, right, the expectations. Dave's somebody who knows that firsthand being in the building. But, you know, you think back to last year, he was on the quote-unquote hot seat. There were Mizzou fans that wanted Sam Horn to be the starting quarterback. They didn't believe in Brady Cook, didn't believe in this football team at all. Cody Schrader was virtually a unknown, if you will, on a national scale. Now we're sitting here talking about Missouri being a top 10 or 15 preseason team, college football playoff. Not a lock, but certainly a hopeful. And with the schedule, you feel good about it. It's kind of a surreal feeling. I thought Drink did a pretty good job of handling that. Bought a lot of goodwill, obviously, in the beginning, and calling for Mike Leach to be a Hall of Famer. That was awesome. I thought that was a no-brainer. Yeah. If you're listening, College Football Hall of Fame, that's a no-brainer. Get it right. But otherwise, guys, you know, I was able to ask, obviously, Eli Drinkwitz a question regarding Marcus Carroll, Nate Noel replacing Cody Schrader. He took sort of an interesting angle with it, but I respect it.
They're missing a good person, Chris.
They got to replace the people first. I get it. So, guys, thoughts on Drink? Again, he's one of those guys, you read between the lines. There's some zingers in there, but again, I just think another coach today. I mean, the theme today was coaches, lots of confidence, and they have good reason to have that. I mean, we got a lot of coaches today that have some really good football teams.
Yeah. Drink's kind of your captain cliche guy. He's going to throw a lot of cliches out. I mean, what did Toughness Tuesday, Workman Wednesday? I mean, I've heard of Fast Friday before. I get it, but like you throw a lot of that stuff out. The thing that stood out to me though, and Chris, me and you were texting about this. He seemed real bitter about Blake Baker.
Yeah.
Not only Blake Baker, but Blake Baker, Kevin Peoples, and Jake Olsen all now at LSU on their defensive staff.
He said, I want to talk about the guys we got. I don't want to talk about them.
And then he made it seem like, I mean, he called it the death row D, like it
death
was
row defense.
Like they have a defense that, I mean, he's an offensive coach, so there's no like blueprint on how you just run the defense. I don't know that stuff. Because I mean, I'm talking to people. He was pissed. They all left. I know that really bothered me. He thought they would stay. But to be fair, imagine if all those dudes did stay. The continuity Missouri would be talking about.
Dave, you know firsthand how much ego there is in these buildings. Come on now.
You
know it.
No, and I think they just gave him a pretty good contract extension, Blake Baker, before. So to be fair to Eli, he probably felt a little like, man, dude, like I stood on the table for you a little bit, and I get it. It's LSU, you're bailing, but man, we could be really good this upcoming year. Talking about this upcoming year, so I think he feels some type of way. I mean, I don't know if he really believes this, but he kind of made it sound like they're not going to miss a beat, and he didn't think it was much of a loss. I mean, we can agree to disagree on that. But then he also threw in that Corey Batoon and him, it's been taking a little bit like 6 months for them to kind of get on the same page. He mentioned for him to kind of do things the way I want it. So I don't know if that resentment's coming from, man, if I just had my dudes back, this summer would be awesome. I'd be thinking about my wife, what hotel room, what suite she needs to book in Atlanta come early December. So I could see him being to me, it screamed he's not as fired up about the defense as he probably would. To me, it screamed a little insecurity the way he acted about that. I thought the Baton Rouge Advocate guy asked a phenomenal question. Tell us about Blake Baker's strengths, weaknesses, what you like. Like you said, Chris, totally avoided it. No, I'm going to talk about Corey Batoon.
Cole's not going to like this objectivity you're presenting about Missouri football, by the way.
I have to defend the Mizzou audience. They're right now.
Go ahead, Cole.
Listen, I have made this abundantly clear. My fandom can be bought on this channel. You just got to send me something via Venmo. I will support you, and I will talk highly of you. And so far, Mizzou fans have been flooding my mentions on Twitter. And on top of that, they follow me on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson. Shameless plug. Hate to do that. But Drink, we're going to have to find a new way to describe Caden Green that is not STI. Let's start off there, buddy. We do not need to go that way. And also, we do not even talk about death row, especially with today's private culture, because I don't want to see you get canceled. I mean, can you imagine, like, think about this. Last week, nobody had a worse field day than probably the PR staff at Oklahoma State. You have to wonder at some point, was Mizzou just sweating in their bullets? Like, dude, please let that be the least one. Please let that be the most egregious that you come up with. But the part that I want to talk about with Drink is that I appreciate he admitted that last year was last year, because I don't think a lot of us are. I think a lot of us still internally believe that last season is going to transpire over to this season. A lot of us believe that last season is only the start of something promising. It's the start of something that could end up being a new era of Mizzou football. And I brought this up on our other show. We talked about this. For Missouri, when they joined in 2012, there was a new narrative around the SEC. What's going to redefine you for this era of SEC football? And now, because you're adding in Texas and Oklahoma, it's kind of the same notion. How do you define yourself in this era of SEC football? Because the way that people view Arkansas is completely different than when they viewed Arkansas back when Texas A&M and Mizzou joined the conference. And the way that we view South Carolina is completely different than the way back in 2012. So how do you define yourself? And he was honest, and he was completely transparent, saying, I get it. There's going to be a lot of hype surrounding us. We got the best wide receiver in the country. We got a great offensive line. We added in some good transfers, and they did. And he's not lying. But last season's last season. And honestly, with their schedule, the one thing that I talked about on the video earlier today about being rat poison transparent, Lane Kiffin gets it. Eli Drinkwitz gets it too. And the biggest difference is I can't find as many trap games on Mizzou's schedule as I can when it comes to Ole Miss's, which might mean that Mizzou actually is facing more rat poison than Ole Miss. Because I've been putting them in permanent marker in the college football playoff. Here's the Sharpie that I've been writing in circles. Mizzou CFP team, how dare we respect the Tigers? And honestly, I feel like that he's got ahead of the curve of, yeah, we get it. We know that there's going to be rat poison there. Also, real quickly, here is just the rule college football Hall of Fame committee. If you change the sport in any way, shape, or form, Hall of Famer. First ballot, I don't give a flying care in the world what your credentials are. Like, if you do something in the sport that we talk about 4 decades later, the way Mike Leach has, who gives a crap if he's 1 win away? No.
Well, Cole, good rule of thumb. And whatever Hall of Fame this is, whatever sport, can you tell the history without mentioning the person?
Yep.
And if you can't, you're a surefire Hall of Famer. And Mike Leach is that. So,
and that's Monty Kiffin too, which, by the way, also to all coaches so far. Shane Beamer brought it up. Lane brought it up naturally. Of course, Eli brought it up. They're mentioning Monty Kiffin. And there's going to be a lot of kids that maybe watch this program. There's going to be a lot of younger adolescents that don't understand the name Kiffin. Before there was Lane, there was Monty. And Monty was a staple in the industry. There will be people that talk about Monty's legacy in the collegiate level and in the NFL level for decades on end, especially down in Tampa, and especially for what he's done for defenses.
Hey, before we get off Missouri and drink, hey, just so we know, Cole, the Friday night before every game, whoever the 12 opponents Missouri has on every Friday night when they make their hype video, they're going to have Cole's voice over.
I swear to God.
Love that. Love that.
That is like the one thing I want this year is for my voice to be in one video. Just one teaser.
Oh, yours is going to be shown behind the scenes, though, Cole. It's going to be the opposing team. Like when they play Alabama, they're showing like the hype video to get ready for that game. They're going to have – I mean, listen to this guy.
They're going to have the Cole Thompson hype tape to prove him
Please,
wrong.
I want it. I embrace being the villain for your team. I wanted you to pay me to go ahead and support your team. I'm also willing to pay to talk mad crap about your team. That way you can make fun of me on this app later. I'm okay with that either way.
I also thought it was kind of funny. I mean, what else is he supposed to say? I get it, but he was asked about the whole Caden Green thing. How did that come about? Is that going to add a little bit more juice to the matchup with Oklahoma? And he kind of just, it's great for social media, great for fans. I don't think it's. And my thought sitting there was BS, man. You know that there's going to be some. There's some hard feelings. I think they're looking forward to that one. So,
hey, CP, I thought there was one question it might have chapped Cole's ass. Where there was somebody who asked Brent Venables, do you think joining the SEC is going to have an impact or lessen the Texas Oklahoma?
Yeah. Lessen Red River. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I will be here for another, God, what is it now? 7 hours. It is not playing second fiddle to any rivalry in college football, especially in the SEC, -1. And it only happens when it travels to another conversation that we have to talk about real fast because multiple people have brought it up. The Iron Bowl at Jordan-Hare is the only rivalry, in my opinion, in the SEC that trumps Red River. And that's number 3 in college football for me, which, by the way, Kirby said it now. Nick has said it now. All 3 of us have said it now. Jackson Arnold said he didn't go to Auburn because it was cursed, because Carson Beck told him to. Are we going to start listening in on this one, people? It's actually a very difficult place to play. Jordan-Hare is not a pretty stadium, but it is a cursed stadium because the shaman man and his voodoo magic that is seeped in the soil of Jordan-Hare comes out on rivalry week. It does.
Built on top of an Indian burial ground or something like that.
He's buried there. I'm telling you, dig up his bones. You will start seeing Alabama win by 70, and there will never be a kick 6 again, ever. Just dig it up.
Yeah, we've got another jam-packed day to look forward to tomorrow from Dallas, Texas. Kalen DeBoer of Alabama, Jeff Lebby of Mississippi State, you guys' favorite head coach in the SEC, Billy Napier of Florida, and Steve Sarkisian from Texas. It's Texas Day tomorrow in Dallas. Guys, again, we were talking about Brent Venables, kind of kept it cool, calm, collected, very humble. I think Texas is going to come here tomorrow. I don't want to speak for them now, but I think they're going to come in with that chest poked out, beating their chest a little bit like, here, the big bully has arrived. So it's going to be a lot of fun. That'll be the final one of the day. And, of course, we'll get to talk about that, break all that down, recap it. But, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Again, stay tuned to all the content. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get those. You can find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. Make sure you follow my guy, Dave Shumate, at Mach 10 Sports, Cole Thompson at Mr. Cole Thompson, me at CPhilly19, and, of course, SEC Unfiltered at SEC Unfiltered for all our content. Again, it's content bleeding out of the eyeballs. We're hitting this thing from all angles, whether it's boots on the ground, it's video content, it's graphic, whatever it might be. Make sure you're following along. Guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow afternoon, same time, live from SEC Media Days.